Clodagh today. My apologies, but we do have the lovely Louise Bayliss online with us. So thanks again for your patience. We are coming towards the end. So we've Louise, and then the next two speakers we have are the amazing Ollie Bell and our very own Brian Jordan. So I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. So I'm actually going to have a chat with Louise in place of Clodagh. If Clodagh joins within the next couple of minutes, I'll let her take over. But we'll just work with what we have now. So Louise, you're very welcome. If you want to introduce yourself.
I do. Thank you, Louise, and lovely to talk to you. This seems like people are earwigging in on our normal private conversations. That's okay, because we normally have these chats on our own. So my name is Louise Bayliss. I am the campaign coordinator in Focus Ireland. So I'm in the advocacy team and run their campaigns. So as you can imagine, at the moment, we're very busy. And in addition, I am the founding member and spokesperson for Spark, which is Single Parents Acting for the Rights of Kids.
Fantastic. And you've got a huge background behind you. And again, oh, Clodagh's here. Brilliant. Hi, Clodagh. I was just filling in on the way. So, oh, hang on. Let me just authorize you here to put on the microphone. Wait for Clodagh to jump online with us, and then Clodagh can introduce herself. But yes, like I said, you've got a great background behind you, Louise, and the stuff that you've done over the last few years in terms of leadership, and so it's the advocacy work that you've done for not just people that you work for in Focus Ireland, but just parents in general, women in general, has been amazing. So I'm really excited for this conversation, and actually I'm delighted that Clodagh's jumped on board, because Clodagh, you've got an equal amount of kind of background and advocacy work that you've done for different groups. So I'm actually going to just pass the baton on over to the two of you, and I'm going to shut up. Clodagh, you haven't been here up until now, so basically in the next kind of 10 minutes or so, I'll just put my hand up, and once you see my hand is up, that it's giving you like a 5-minute warning that we're nearly finished. Okay. Perfect. Listen, thanks a million and best of luck. So we've already introduced Louise. So Clodagh, if you can introduce yourself and then you can go into your chat, that'd be great. You're muted, Clodagh. Clodagh, sorry, you're muted.
Great. Okay, you can hear me now?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. So basically, it's brilliant to be here today. I'm absolutely delighted to be part of this event. And Louise, to thank you for organising it and for all the hard work that you've put in. It's really much appreciated, and it's a credit to you. So well done. And also as well to say it was a pleasure talking to you also on Friday, Louise Bayliss, and it's great to be again here in an event with you, because I think, you know, what we talked about on Friday as a kind of a precursor, it resonates, and it's an important message to get across. So it's just brilliant to be here, and I'm delighted to be part of this event. I guess my background is I trained as a nurse in St. James's Hospital in the early 90s during the AIDS epidemic. And when I was a student nurse, I became part of the AIDS movement through AIDS Helpline Dublin. And I went on then to train as a counsellor and an organisational psychologist. And then life took over and got busy for a number of years. And my best friend, who I met on the helpline a number of years later, I was training with the Rape Crisis Centre. I did a postgraduate in sexual violence and sexual abuse. And Mike, my best friend, said to me, he said, I don't want to know what you're doing down there, but I've got AIDS Helpline Clodagh back again. And I think that was the kind of start of things for me as regards looking at sexual violence and the legal system, and how people are represented who are victims of sexual violence, and the way that the judicial process treats them. So as a result of that, I went on and I did a postgraduate in family law, and now I'm training as a solicitor part-time, and I'm also trained as a trauma therapist. So that the two things marry very well, because I guess what I would really like to see for people is trauma-informed evidence within the judicial system. So that's my background, and I work here in TU Dublin and Blanchardstown, and I love my work with the students as well, so that's great. case. That's me.
That's great, Clodagh. And one of the things we had the conversation when we were talking on Friday, and I think we both said, you know, what is the message that we want to give out to women who want aspire to leadership roles? And I think if you're a young person, it's very hard to find your voice. And I have been very impressed today earlier on listening to some young people, and they did find their voices. So maybe that message is wrong. Maybe they're more articulate and more capable of speaking than I was at the time when I was young. And maybe we have a generation of young women who are more prone to speaking. But I think one of the things that is really important is to not be afraid to say your voice, or to not to use your voice, because it can be very intimidating when you go into a room and it's full of older men, and you know, we have a tendency as women to check our, you know, to be very aware of our inabilities and not so aware of our abilities. And we go into a room and we're conscious of, oh, I think they're better than me at maths, but not realizing, well, you might be better at them in something, and not believing we've something to bring to the table. And I've been in so many meetings as a younger woman, not now and as much anymore, but when I was younger, I'd go into meetings and I'd keep my mouth shut because I would think that they were more expert than me. But then realizing as they spoke, Jesus, they're not. I actually have something to say, and I can add something. And there's a lot of people who will speak for the sake of speaking, and it's important to if you really aspire to leadership, to speak when you have something to contribute, and not to speak over people who actually have something more to contribute in that space. Like, for instance, I'm a white woman. If we're talking about racism, I'm not going to step on somebody's toes. I'm not going to try to explain what racism is. I'm going to sit in that room and listen, and to know when there are moments where you can contribute to it and go, okay, I can empathize with that because of X, Y, Z, but to actually to know where the common ground is, but to know where somebody has expertise, and to lift other women up. I think one of the things that women need to do more is to lift each other up. And I'm a real believer in, you know, if you got up there, keep the ladder down and try to put your hand down and bring as many people up with you, as many women as you can, to create a better society for all of us.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, Louise, that, you know, we have to support each other as women. And unfortunately, sometimes, because of the way that things are structured, we can be set against each other. And, you know, it's to recognize that we are far stronger together. And, you know, to kind of help each other along, and, you know, to take that chance as well, and to have the courage to speak up. And one of the things that I really believe that we can do as older women is, you know, provide that support and mentorship when it's needed. You know,
yeah.
And
I think one of the things, and you touched on it there earlier, Clodagh, when you said you wanted to go back and study the law, and the law is very much antiquated in Ireland, around certain issues around women. So, for instance, you were speaking about sexual violence, and, you know, when we were talking on Friday about some of the things that if a woman claims that she was raped, that her sexual history is up on the table, and she can be torn apart and have to reveal things that have nothing to do with that case, but that is still in case. And then one of the other things that really upsets me is, you know, because obviously in Spark I represent lone parents, and that the system is so weighed against that there is no child maintenance system in Ireland. We're one of the few UN countries that doesn't have a robust child maintenance system. And again, that's legislative, that is designed by a law written by men, not really considering the consequences. We have poverty rates at 3 times more likely to be in poverty as a child in a lone parent household. And a lot of that is because the laws do not enforce maintenance. And you know, we've if I didn't pay my property tax tomorrow, and there was a thing a couple of weeks ago going around Twitter because loads of people got contacted by Revenue because they hadn't signed up to their direct debit, hadn't gone through for their property tax, and there was a threat that they would go to their employees and take it out of their salary directly. However, if a man does not pay his child maintenance, that does not happen. Revenue will not go after him. And what message does that say to children and to women, that we will pursue property, but we won't pursue money owed to children, when we have so many children living in poverty today, and we know who these children are, and we know the solutions, and we choose to go after property tax, not child maintenance. That's me and my high horse, but just when you said about the solicitor, I think it's so important to have women in those leadership roles. Both, we've had politicians here today who can make changes to the legislation, and then solicitors and people in the legal field who can make these and make the law that was designed over 100 years ago in many cases, but to make it more equal from a gender point of view.
And Louise, I am in absolute agreement with you around maintenance for children. It was an eye-opener for me when I did the postgraduate in family law. I was the only non-solicitor in the class, so they often assumed that I knew lots of things, and I didn't. And I was shocked when I found out about the system around maintenance. And the whole fact of the matter is, as you're saying, every child has the right to be supported and to have a good life. And while there is a mechanism there for taking money direct from somebody's account if they're not paying maintenance, it's not enacted enough. And
but Clodagh, even going into that, there are real barriers with that. In theory, it is doing it, but you have to go into court. But even at that, the enforcement order is against the employer. So the way around it is, and this is the on the ground thing that even solicitors don't really realize, but lone parents will, is they change job and the order is no longer valid. Whereas that's where I'm talking about with going to revenue. It doesn't matter what job they change. It isn't up to you to follow them around finding which employer, because the minute they give up their job, that order is now defunct. And so it's useless. It's absolutely useless.
And we all know it as well. There are people who deliberately leave employment.
Absolutely. And if they don't tell you who their employer is, you've absolutely no way of getting an attachment order, because you have to go in and you have to name the employer. And if they won't tell you the employer, you've no way of doing it. And even if you do get the employer, they just change jobs and you're back in the circuit again. So that is, like, it's offered to us as a solution. It is not practical. It's not real. And any woman who's gone through it will tell you that is just not feasible.
No, it's not. And I mean, I would absolutely agree. The family courts are an awful place to be for women, and they're an awful place to be for children.
And men, to be honest, they're a horrible place for anybody. And a lot of the things that are being involved in the courts should not be involved in. I mean, child maintenance is not, it's not, who says the right things at the right time. It's based on what the income is and what the child's need is. There is no need for court. There are other countries have done it with a formula and it's just taken out, and that's just the end of it. Pushing people into court for things like access and maintenance is wrong, because courts are, by their very nature, combative places. There's winners and losers. And when you're dealing with people's emotions, people's relationship with their children, with child maintenance, all of those issues, they should not be in a courtroom setting where somebody feels like they've lost, not when it's such valuable things as the welfare of children. And I'm saying that from both a men and a woman's thing. I just think the courts are the wrong place.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And I mean, in a way, it's horse trading with people's lives. That's effectively, what it is. But within the system that we have to, it's an awful thing to say, but that's what we have to deal with. And we have to keep speaking up, and we have to keep pushing for reform. We have to keep pushing for reform all the time.
I'm just going to jump in really quickly with saying there's 4 minutes left. This conversation is just invaluable, because whereas we do have a huge, obviously, population of students who may not be married, who may not be going through this, there are students out there who are doubly affected and impacted. I'm a mother, I am in a relationship, but I have plenty of friends.
But there's many people listening, Louise, as well, who they may not be going through it, but they are children who lived in poverty because of, they were impacted by it in some way.
No, absolutely. And I just wanted to kind of point out that while a lot of people watching this may not be directly impacted, there's going to be people like myself who could really resonate with what you're saying here today. So thank you so much for sharing all this information. And again, like you were pointing out that people who are in poverty, children who are in poverty right now, may have barriers to leadership for that exact reason. Because again, you're talking about the court system, and what happens when parents do not have the best interest of the child at heart in certain cases, not all obviously, but
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go for the last 3 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions. But great chat, guys. I'm loving it.
Oh, great. Can I just say one thing as well, just before we finish? That something that's very important in terms of reform as well is the voice of the child within the judicial system. So we need to have reforms where children can safely be heard and their experiences recognised, and it needs to be done very safely and in a very non-traumatizing way. So again, that's a huge thing going forward for reform for the family courts. We need to have safe recognition, and a safe space for the voice of the child.
I 100% agree with you, Clodagh, and I also think that every decision made should be in the best interest of the child. If we take that as the starting point, then it shouldn't be a winner or a loser, of a male or a female or a father or a mother. It should be what's in the best interest of the child and the outcome for the child. And there are many people, students in TU today, whose parents have split up and who have been victims of an unfair system where their needs were missed out on. So that's really important message to keep, that for future generations, the children, their voices and their best interests are acknowledged by the court system. Sorry, that's my dog snoring in the background.
Great. Do you want to have any final thoughts that you might want to kind of share, like in yourselves and your journeys to both leadership positions, where they're very different, but there's a parallel, I think, between the two of you, and stuff that you are both really interested in. But like, if you were looking at and starting back again today, like, what advice would you give a woman coming into leadership or someone who presents as female?
The only advice I would give is to be authentic and true to yourself. The rest will come from it, and not to be afraid to use your voice. The lived experience is always the most powerful experience, and I see that in my job in Focus Ireland, because one of the things we have is a lived experience ambassador panel, and there are people who've experienced homelessness, and having their engagement over the last couple of years has really made a difference in how we frame our policies in Focus Ireland and how we approach our work. And I think you forget sometimes, you may not have the academic qualifications for things and you're afraid to speak out, but sometimes that on the ground lived experience is the most powerful thing, and never to negate the impact that can have and your lived experience. And we all have different lived experience, but using your lived experience to voice out injustice where you see it, that is how real leadership comes.
Sorry, Louise, I feel like we're back in your house right now. This is because it's literally is the conversation we have on a daily basis or a regular basis. Yeah, total, like I said earlier, I'm imposter syndrome on a daily basis, but it's yeah, it's such a powerful message. And what you said, the lived experience, it's the most powerful experience. Absolutely, totally agree with you. Chloe, did you have
And
any
we
final
forget
thoughts?
it, that we forget we own
Yeah, sorry.
that and nobody can
Yeah,
take it from us.
absolutely, Louise. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, Louise. The lived experience is just key. And along with that, what I would say as well is to have courage. If you have fire in your belly for something, it's there for a reason, and go with that. And the other really important thing that I would think too is in terms of leadership, it's about paying it forward. If there's a small service that you can do somebody, do it, because you might never know how and what kind of impact that act is going to have for somebody else. So pay it forward. If there's something that you know and you think it can help other people, put it out there, talk to them, share. Equally, people will come back and help you as well. So that little act of service, I think, can be a huge thing as well.
That was brilliant. We are coming towards the end now. If there's any questions, put them in the Q&A section. As I've mentioned multiple times today, our speakers are all available and ready to speak and reach out. Like, so Louise is very active on Twitter. You can get a hold of Clodagh through the TU Dublin email address. Everything is all available online. But if there are no like exact questions right now, I'd love to move on to our final